Hello and welcome to Goa 365's Face to Face. With us is Shaunak Samant. Shaunak has got into the London School of Economics. He is going to do his Bachelor's in Law honours in England at this very prestigious school. He joins a very distinguished group of people who will be ultimately the alumni of that august school. He's probably the second Goan, if I'm not mistaken, the second Goan to have joined this school, and the first who has joined this school through the Goan educational system. Shaunak, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Shaunak is no stranger to us. He's been on our debate shows earlier too. So, but this is something that is basic. This is Shaunak's show. Shaunak, could you tell us, give us some details of what you're going to do there? How did you decide to go? Because I know that you were very focused on this. So, could you give us these details first, and then we'll go into other things. Shaunak.
Yeah, sure. So I'll be completing
let me interrupt. Congratulations. Also.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I personally chose the London School of Economics because it is well believed to be the second best school of social sciences in the world after Harvard University, and it is the third best school for the common law bachelor's degree. So the common law bachelor's degree in London, which is known as the LLB honours course, is a 3 years course in contrast to the 5 years course in India. And in this 3 years course, rather than focusing on mainly just statutory teachings, it is more based on the philosophy and the theory of law.
That's very, very nice. But in fact, I wanted to ask you this. Normally, when you talk about law, everybody talks about Harvard. But we've had these discussions earlier, I know. What made you go for the London School of Economics specifically vis-a-vis Harvard?
Okay, so Harvard is undoubtedly number one when it comes to social sciences, and LSE is number two. The thing about Harvard is you need to undertake a 4-year undergraduate degree,
okay,
a liberal arts bachelor's. Then you need to pursue a 3 years JD, which is a Juris Doctor, which is equivalent to an LLB in India. Okay. Then you after 2 years of internship, you will be eligible to answer the bar in the United States. Now, the problem with the United States is the legal systems are entirely different to the way it functions in India, and there is a lot of federalism when it comes to the legal systems, and even ideologically we are similar in no way. But when it comes to England, our legal system has a lot of our primary statutes, such as the Indian Penal Code, Civil Procedure Codes and all, which have existed since British times. And this school of Anglo-Saxon jurisprudence prevails to a great extent in India and has influenced our courts in such a way that ideas such as stare decisis and the common law jurisdiction have strong principles that are embodied in our legal society.
Okay, now how you started the journey, because it's not so easy according to what we know to get into these colleges abroad. So how did you first decide, and then how did you follow this, get into this whole thing, the procedure? Because I'm sure a lot of students in Goa in India would want to know.
Yeah. So the problem with applying abroad, mainly for Goan students, is that there is an inherent disadvantage when it comes to elitism and when it comes to the school. So Goa is not home to any highly elite schools which are in the top 10 of the country, or which have produced students that have continuously gone to such top institutes. I think there might be just a handful of students who have ever gone from Goa. So it just puts ISC or CBSC students and state board students at a strong disadvantage. So the acceptance rate at London School of Economics is 8% usually for international students. But when it comes to ISC or CBSC students, it's less than 0.13%. So you're at a strong disadvantage from all the other competitors. So that's where you have to start at ground zero. So once you have the vision of where you want to go, I think if you take the right steps, it is in fact very doable, although people might think it's not possible. And there is a very complex admissions procedure, which is for almost all colleges in the UK. And once you undertake this procedure, there are several levels of screening, and if they like your application, you are in fact selected. So I frankly decided to apply somewhere in 11th grade, and I thought that it would be a very great opportunity to pursue law. And frankly telling you, I never thought I would actually get admission into such an institution, taking into account the fierce competition to reach over there. So I broke it down to the very fundamental basics. So the application consists of few basic elements, that is your personal statement, your predicted score, your academic reference, your work experience, and your overall personal details. When it came to academic scores, I focused a lot on the curriculum being taught in 11th and 12th standard, and you strive to achieve something like 95% overall or a strong 90. That's at least the kind of percentage you want to be stable at, so that your predicted scores are relatively high. When it comes to the personal statement is basically an essay explaining your motivations, your interests, your supercurriculars, and the work you have done in the subject. So in order to gain this experience, I would suggest start reading from day one. I just submitted my application through this website called UCAS. You get to apply to up to 5 colleges, and then it's a waiting game. So I would say at least take a good 1 year to plan out how you want to phrase your application. Break down each and everything into the most basic things. The fees for applying are just around 2,000 rupees, so it's not a very hefty application sum as in the United States. So in those 2,000 rupees, you get to apply to 5 different colleges. And then afterwards, there was an interview process. There was a LNAT, which was a Law Nationals Aptitude Test. So the LNAT is notoriously hard because you can't really study for it. It basically tests your aptitude. It's not a knowledge test. So I would say from a very young age, focus on how to be argumentative and how to think critically and laterally about a problem, especially if you want to pursue law, and give it your best shot. Because no matter whatever anybody tells you, however hard it is, however not possible, impossible, not done before, I'm sure with the right determination, you too will be able to achieve it very easily.
Now, there are a lot of problems I'm sure you faced in this path for you to ultimately get in, even now. So,
Yes.
could you give us some, because I know that, if I'm not very sure of this, because, but I don't think there are any sort of, courses which help you prepare for this type of thing in the state first, and later on we can get into other, but there's nothing that helps you prepare for any of these top colleges in the world in Goa, are there?
No, actually I received no such resource from within the state, except the support of my school, who helped me in my academic references and throughout my studies, and generally motivated me. But when it comes to the science of the whole admissions process,
yes,
and it is indeed a very cutthroat and a very political process, because you need to play your cards very well. Political in the sense that you need to be very shrewd in the way you present stuff and how you present the stuff too. Because at the end of the day, it is a game of presentation. So yes, there is nobody with this experience in the state, for the simple reason that not many people from the state have actually gone here when it comes to undergraduate degrees. For masters, it's a whole different process, and there are a lot of Goan students who have gone for masters to several universities worldwide. But when it comes to undergraduate processes, there is a greater deal of stress involved, because you're going directly after 12th standard, and the admissions procedure in India is very quantitative. It's completely different from any foreign admissions procedure.
Could you tell us the difference? What do you mean by knowledge based and skill based? We talk about mugging versus applications.
Yes,
what exactly, or the pure knowledge of science?
I'll give you an example of how the CLAT functions. That's the common law admissions test for India, and the LNAT function. So the CLAT basically has a math section, has a general knowledge section, has a legal analysis section, out of which only the legal analysis to an extent involves your aptitude. Other than all of that, GK, maths or English section can be studied by the student. So it's the student who studies for the longest, who has the access to the most amount of resources, who will be able to perform to the best extent in quantitative exams. That's the thing. When it comes to qualitative exams, they don't prescribe a portion. So when I was studying for the LNAT, there was no portion, or there was no requirement for you to learn anything about British current affairs or British legal system. They basically test your skills of argumentation, there's a essay section in which you have to frame a essay on a very philosophical argument, which is indeed very hard, and they test what is the structure of your essay, how you elucidate the points, what is the strength of your argument, how much you have dealt into the depth of the essay. They are interested in all of that. Then there is a MCQ section in which all the answers for the question are correct. There's no wrong answer. Literally all the answers are correct. You have to choose one answer, and they will see why you chose that answer and which answer is the closest. So it's a degree of difference that matters more, and they want to check in what direction you are thinking. So I think these are more cognitive assessments rather than just quantitative assessments.
Okay, let me slightly divert from the LSE. Let me divert from that. Tell me one thing: is this the difference between the Indian education system and the system which people follow in the developed world, like say UK and US? And is this because with the Indian base which they go 10 standard, 12 standard, our Indians get, succeed so well there, and here they're even very brilliant, and there are a lot of PhDs in English who don't know English? Is this probably one of the reasons that this happens there?
See, I'll come to that. So see, India, I think in a great sense is in some sort of a British hangover. Okay, so we are following a philosophy of education that was brought to India by the British in the colonial era, which is quantitativeness, who can wrote the most and who can literally vomit the most amount of content, like just by hearted. That's by hearting something is considered a very positive trait in India, and it is looked down in the West. Yeah.
Correct.
So the British have moved on from this quantitative system, and they have gone into a more qualitative basis. Historically, India was the one who had a lot of emphasis on the Gurukul system and who believed in the practical learning through experiences, through the past, through great epics, through theory, through shastras, and we have lost this in the bargain. And India has moved into a very rigid system of education. I think through the new education policy, the government is making attempts to change this, and let's see how it pans out in the next 10 to 15 years. Our education system might be completely different. But yes, I think primarily that is the difference, where in the West, it's more based on practical learning, and there is not so much of stress on standardized examination as there is in India.
I just wanted to know one thing now, how much of help, because see, you take the Indian rupee, the English pound, so how much of help does the state, local as well as central, give for undergraduates or bachelors when you go abroad? And what you think should do? What is the solution?
Okay, so frankly, there is no expertise, there's no counseling, there's no training involved on the government. That is one aspect where they are not helping in imparting the skills required. There's no education consultancy part or something like that, because there's no widespread knowledge on this. Secondly, there's absolutely no form of undergraduate scholarship for students trying to pursue their studies abroad. There are scholarships, but these scholarships may be provided by the college themselves, and these are extremely rare from British colleges. It's more in need-based Ivy League colleges in the United States where there's financial aid and stuff like that. In England, particularly, there is no concept of bursaries for foreign or international students. And even the rate of education loans in India is extremely drastic. It's like 10% interest, 12% interest. The lowest you might be able to come down to is 9% interest. So for a student who is going to be taking a loan of nearly 50 lakh rupees, 60 lakh rupees, and then he has to start paying it in just 1 year from graduation, especially in a field of social sciences, that makes no sense, because for law, for journalism, it takes you politics, it takes you a good 10-15 years to really settle down and to earn a stable income. Yeah, maybe in the sciences, if you get a package, you'll start earning a greater amount faster, but in social sciences, it's just not possible that you will be able to pay back installments of 2 lakh rupees or 1 lakh rupees a month directly when you start earning. So I think there has to, because since the government does provide scholarships for master students, I think there has to be an attempt to provide scholarships to undergraduate students too, because Indian students are very capable, and some of the most brilliant and bright students I have at least come across in my contact. And I think Indians are very hardworking people, and we basically see a lot of problems around us. So there is an urge to be innovative, and there is an urge to solve these problems and to really help in the progress of the country. Because we all dream of seeing India at the global stage of that future superpower nation. And this is only possible when from a very young age, the greatest amount of opportunities are made available to the most meritorious students. I don't think finances should curtail you, although they do. They shouldn't be a hindrance in you achieving your ultimate best.
Potential.
And for that reason, I think the government should make a conscious attempt at providing scholarships, because if they have the funds to provide scholarship at a master's level, I think they will also be able to provide it at an undergraduate level. This will also let more students from more simpler backgrounds to apply abroad. Right now, studying undergraduate abroad is considered a very elite thing that is confined to the rich, which is a very bad idea and a very bad sort of image to be conveyed upon the people. Because especially in England, it's a very transparent system. There's no question of reservation, hereditary seats, or anything like that. If you are meritorious, if you are capable, they will take you. The only thing holding us back from going over there is the flaws in the education system itself. And I think with the right amount of work, with the right amount of policies from the government, a lot of difference will be seen in the next 10 to 15 years if these opportunities are made available.
Yeah, okay, moving on from this. Now maybe it's an attitude, maybe the right people, the way you have to, I mean, go about it and all that. But also, don't you think that Indians need, see, we, if you see, since argumentative Indian, he says Indians are argumentative XYZ. But Indians, India as the students and all, are they really critical, lateral thinking? Do we actually do this? In the school, in the college
Yes.
level and all, do they? Because I don't know. I'll give my opinion
See,
later. But what do you feel?
I think nobody is born as a genius. I think geniuses are made.
Okay.
And geniuses have to be made through the educational system. If the educational system's primary focus is being quantitative, the outlook of the students too will be quantitative. Instead, if they focused on a more skills-based and a more experience-based form of learning, the students too will be able to think critically, and the students too will be able to think laterally. As far as India is concerned, I think a lot of discrimination is made on the basis of even one's comprehension of English when it comes to certain things like this. Especially, we think that if one doesn't think in English, one is not critical enough, one is not erudite enough. I think English is seen as more of a means of intelligence rather than a means of communication here. So I think Indians do have that skill set within them. I think the right education system and the right philosophy has to be imbibed into Indians. And that is to learn from our roots, because this is something India has done in the past. India was the center of innovation for over 2-3 millennia. India was the center of educational. We are the people with the greatest scientists and philosophers in the past. And nowadays, if you see India's performance when it comes to Nobel Prizes or any scientific Turing medals, field medals, is extremely poor. And I don't think this is because Indians in general are lacking that amount of expertise. I think Indians are nurtured in such a way. So we need to change the way the environment is when it comes to education. And the perceptions are when it comes to intelligence and skills. If we start making efforts now, in the long run, it will help, I'm sure.
See, I agree with what you say, but in a way, but it's why I feel the issue is that, see, because I'm not talking about having a good memory and not having a good memory. A lot of us have got almost photographic memories. I think it's one of the things that Indians have. But what is rewarded in colleges is, as you said, memory. You look this, you this. You are not rewarded if you think, you analyze, you discuss, you talk. Not even in a majority of the schools and colleges. Like you take that all the B colleges in the country, even to the level of IIT, besides very few subjects. It's like, okay, this is what I have given you. This is what that is rewarded. Like otherwise, how would somebody get 100 in English? You just do a few compositions. So is that, unless that changes, will we always have a problem with research? Because research is not really highly valued here. It's more the Babu researchers who are valued than the innovators. The going against the trend, going against the current, which is valued in places like US or UK. So don't you think that mindset change has to come first before what you're talking is actually even people even actually accept it?
Yes, I think to a strong extent, Indians are very hesitant when it comes to something new, cosmopolitan ideas or
It's
ideas
not
that are
rewarded,
in
that's why.
opposition.
It's not rewarded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you think?
Or ideas that are in opposition to the conservative conservative school of thought. Anything that is found contrary to this, Indians are always very hesitant to even consider it or even be open to it. This hesitancy is there in the West too, but it's to a very relatively less extent in the ones who are educated. In India, even the educated people find it hard to accept something that is different from their principles. And because this difference of opinion is not welcome, and because freedom of thought and creativity is not rewarded, it is killing creativity to a good extent, because such kind of imaginative minds and imaginative senses are not allowed to progress in colleges. I think there has to be a landmark shift in the way we go about things, and I don't think opinions are changed overnight. I think the government has taken in some way some steps with regards to the new education policy. I was happy to read the way in which they want the philosophy of the curriculum to be.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
But it's going to take a long time. If this was done at a very early stage, when a large percentage of India had not got used to this, when we were, say, nascently independent or something like that, maybe you would have had a different outcome. But I think something that didn't happen in the past is not a reason to delay it for the future too. I think we ourselves have to start realizing and rewarding people who are creative. If you see professions such as artistry, then literature and all are not often very rewarded or revered in Indian culture of lately. It's seen that the one that can gain the most amount of capital, the most amount of money is the most rewarding profession. Whereas in the golden age of India, we focus more on culture, more on society, and more on creativity and thought. And if we do want to reach back to that era in which the country reaches to the zenith of research, to the zenith of intellect, yes, we do need to reward creativity. I 100% agree with you.
No, but I don't quite agree with you on that part. See, you have to be creative to succeed. Me Too's don't succeed. For example, you look at the US only, you see Einstein, you see Steve Jobs, you see the Tesla. These guys are geniuses, innovative. They may not be geniuses in the conventional sense, but these guys are brilliant, and they have made a hell of a lot of money ultimately. You see Facebook, all these guys. It's not, but this is what is probably lacking, that innovation, that research driven. See, the Kaveri engine is an example. Anyway, I'll not get into that, but this is, I don't agree that that money, you can make a lot of money if you are innovative. That's something that people should realize probably in India.
The problem is people focus on money as an end rather than money as a means.
As a tool, as a means. Absolutely.
Yeah. People like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk focused on creativity, the science, and providing a product.
Correct.
Money was the thing that they made along the way.
Exactly. This is my point. Absolutely. Totally agree with you. Shaunak, it was a pleasure, and we wish you best of luck. Thank you. And keep watching Goa 365.